This shit not. What's up, everyone? We're live. What's good, people? This is Anon. I'm out here outside. How you guys doing? I hope you're doing well. All right, we got the stream going live. You don't want to wait for people to get in the room. Get in the room, people. Let's get the subscribes up. Likes and subscribes. Tell your people, like and subscribe. You, whoever you are, make yourself known right now. You're watching me. Type your name in the fucking live chat, or else, motherfucker. Like and subscribe, people. Get up your like and subscribes. Right. So today, how you doing? Again, Anon here. I'm going to today. I want to discuss kind of just going off these videos I've been making, kind of sharing with you my own meditations that I've created out of these certain things that have been written by people like Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, John C. Lilly, and others. And I've been discussing this phrase or this notion of the organism as a whole interacting with the environment as a whole, and breaking that down in previous videos, the idea of the organism and what comprises an organism. We're going off the notion of 10 systems of the body that comprise of an organism, 10 systems that are interacting, and then within those, what am I saying? One of those systems, those systems themselves also having subsystems within them. One example is the endocrine system, which regulates your has to do with your hormones, right? Which are those glands within your body, right? From the thalamus to the thyroid to the pituitary, right? That's the master gland, right? Your adrenal glands, your gonads, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just thinking right now off the top. Is thalamus? Does that have hormones? Does the thalamus is a thalamus a gland that secretes hormones? I could be mistaken on that. I think it's the pituitary gland, right? But the hypothalamus has got a role to play in the endocrine system, as there are a lot of subsystems within the endocrine system that scientists are now delineating. So you have something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. So that's the HPA axis. And then you have other subsystems within that begin with the hypothalamus and then move down to the pituitary, and then other glands that secrete hormones. So that's an example of subsystems, interacting within a particular system in the body. And then the endocrine system is interacting with your other systems, the 11 systems, right? And all of this comprises all these biological processes are the presence, the ghost in this machine of all these biological processes that are moving along, regardless of what we think of them or not. All these that are just fucking. Something interesting happens when we start thinking about ourselves, and we start thinking about what was before just taken for granted. We are able to gain, we might even our own body, our own mind, like understanding, basically the basic layout of your brain, right? And how interesting that is. But in this, how this might aid in visualization techniques that are, you know, forms of meditation, right? And you know, there's a lot of studies and papers correlating, you know, creative visualization with increased healing and whatnot. And again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not, like I've just read a lot of books on this stuff and just trying to get as clear as possible about what I think about this stuff and share this with whoever is listening here. You got two people on right now. Who the fuck are you? Make yourself known. Type your name in the live chat. Uh, yeah, so I'm just going, you know, sharing with you this sort of meditation contemplation on the notion of organism as a whole, interacting with environment as a whole. Previous videos, like I said, we've covered the organism. And last couple of videos, I've spoken about the environment as a whole, and what are some definitions of how we can define the environment. You know, is here, you know, the earth, right? And things of the earth that humans don't have not created. And you could be alone. This profound experience. Those are environments. There's your internal environments, your internal landscapes, of which it's beneficial to learn from others who came before you, who have explored their own internal, you know, vistas and horizons. You know, they're antipodes of the mind, right? As Aldous Huxley famously, you know, called it. And you know, I've come back to report and told people what they've learned, you know, and these have been, I mean, on down the line, this is just a part of humanity from ancient shamans. Quite often, the shamanistic vibe in the modern Western world has manifested most in, you know, those in religious uh, places, right? Certain monks who have like hit areas of you know, elevated consciousness and whatnot, and you know, people like who is Saint La Jolla, right? La Jolla Ignatius, within the Western Christian tradition. This person was developed contemplations and meditations and observed where his mind went, and he experienced, you know, what is called altered states of consciousness, right? By today, or higher states, or what have you, religious experiences, right? One could say that we never that shamanic has come out most in artists and art, you know. Connection is unstable. I gotta go down there. All right, we're back on. Fixing the connection here. All right. So how that shamanic quality is manifested, you know, in spiritually oriented people and practices, and also in art forms, right? Especially when artists are seeking to tap into that as well. I'm trying to find a good place to sit here. Like this. All right. So, but all that being said, to add on to the notion then of this meditation or contemplation of organism as a whole interacting with environment as a whole, and, you know, exploring, breaking down what is the organism, right? And then breaking down what is the environment. I spoke yesterday about the insights that people who have studied hypnosis have gained about the human psyche and psychology, and how Sigmund Freud before he came up with the technique of free association in his created method of psychoanalysis. He was studying hypnosis, and he basically carried over the insights learned from what the hypnotists, the late 19th century hypnotists, were um, uh, what they found, right? Um, Through the practice of therapeutic hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and that was basically the idea that there are amnesias that occur around trauma, and uh, Freud thought, he believed that free association was a more effective technique than hypnosis in helping people move through that amnesia, and in so doing, gain resolution and healing to move further along with their lives, right? So, touching on this notion or thinking about this notion of amnesia, the amnesia is caused from the pain and the trauma, right? So uh, Otto Rank, the post-Freudian, although he might have studied with Freud, right? Everything everything was about trauma, right? They're all looking at trauma, and Otto Rank basically was saying that the trauma of birth itself was is so intense on everybody that now please correct me if I'm wrong, any professional psychologist who studied Otto Rank, but this is what I've taken away from him, and this idea of birth trauma, and that is being born is so damn fucking shocking and traumatic. We're all dealing with it for the rest of our lives, right? While we also have the fear of death going on too. So we're dealing with being born to begin with, while we're also afraid of dying. And that's what humans are walking around with, man. You know, the apex of the goddamn food chain right there, right? A little bag of meat full of neurosis, pissed off that we were born and afraid to fucking die. Lovely. But that's one way of talking about it. I think that is where people could go in those moments of existential dread. But that's this thing of at least confronting the intensity of life, metaphors that have been provided to us from filling the religion of your culture, right? Like the attempt to describe these things in as scientific terms as possible. And that's why I like discussing Robert Anton Wilson, Timothy Leary, and John Lilly in all this. Especially John Lilly. He was a neuroscientist that was asking the eternal question of where does consciousness reside? Does human consciousness reside only in the body, in this bag of meat, you know, or does consciousness exist outside of these organic bodies, right? So, is there something to you that will remain after you die, right? And he spent his whole career, his illustrious career, pursuing and studying this question as scientifically as possible, and highly recommend his book, The Scientist, all of his books, The Scientist, The Center of the Cyclone, Simulations of God. He's a great writer as well, right? And he created the isolation tank, and more people should know about who this guy is. I think a lot of people did at one time, but um, you know, ebbs and flows, man, ebbs and flows. So John Lilly is significant in this meditation here, this contemplation about organism as a whole interacting with environment as a whole, because he had some interesting things to say about all that. And he defined environments, and especially internal environments, um, and he left in those books his own map, right, for exploring the antipodes of his mind, right? Um, and what he found in his inner explorations coincides with insights from Freud and so many psychologists through the years, as well as meditators, Buddhist meditators, or yogis, or Christian mystics, Muslim mystics, right? Like anyone who spends enough time contemplating and watching their mind enough uh, seem to come to similar basic understanding of the functioning of this 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 squishy silly putty fucking thing in our fucking skull right here, you know and as we're tying it into Lilly's quest of where does consciousness reside, or as the for charting the mind, and we so often associate our minds with ourselves, right? He was uh, I mean, he was doing the visionary philosophical, know thyself, the classic philosophical quest for the philosopher's stone, if you will. And he's seeking to, like I said, chart uh, the the existence, if you will, of consciousness, right? Um, and that's worthy of another video. Lilly's insights into studying the phenomenon of consciousness, right? Because there are a number of different approaches to the idea of consciousness, where it comes from, but two basic ones are: one is the approach which is the classic materialistic approach, which is that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, your brain, right? Consciousness is just basically uh freaking electrical signals being fucking shot back and forth along the spongy fucking material, full of all squished up with gyri, and was a sulci. That's the terminology for why the brain is all fucking squiggly and wrinkled looking like that. You know what I mean? Like, and so that classic materialistic viewpoint that consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, which even Karl Marx and others, Thomas Malthus, believed. Well, I bring up Karl Marx because of that. He's such a seminal sort of thinker. This idea then that if consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, well, so many things are socially constructed, right? And meaning that human beings have played a much larger part in constructing our physical superstructures and our physical environments than we give ourselves credit for. And then we also take responsibility for. We also shun the responsibility for these things that we've created by saying, oh, well, it was something else, right? It's if you're going along that line of reality as a social construction, well, what one result of that is, further responsibility. We must be more responsive and understanding to every trying to understand this, um, because we are consciously engaged in the reconstruction of this reality all the time. There are no, one cannot be neutral on a moving train. There are no passive observers in this game, right? We're all actively involved in the constant recreation, co-creation of reality. All that is needed is just further clarity of terms, because saying that you play a major part in the construction of reality does not mean that you could fucking psychokinetically move the cup of coffee along to fucking take a sip of it. You know? But there are principalities involved in understanding just the basic psychological operations of your gray matter, right? This is what I'm doing with all this jib jab right here. You know what I mean? So Lilly, by posing that question of where does consciousness reside, you know, he's testing that. He's also testing the scientific materialistic hypothesis, right? That consciousness is an epiphenomenon of matter, right? And he's going into dangerous territory to some academics and scholars, because that's where you get into woo-wee territory, of which science so gloriously liberated itself from, which are these religious, irrational, religious, superstitious belief systems. Lilly is taking the quest of venturing into those spiritual experiences and trying to define the terms as as scientifically as possible, right? As scientifically as possible, meaning he's utilizing the language and concepts of during the 70s, current 60s and 70s, current scientific studies of neuroanatomy, right? Because again, he was a neuroscientist, right? So what he was in his ventures within, he was also finding similar insights as you know, people like Freud, right? And the hypnotists, that there are, what he said, programs or tape loops, because he's utilizing the metaphors of the day, right? Tape cassettes were like the new shit. Cassette tapes, right? So what Lilly was saying, he also is you know, analogizing the human brain with a computer, with a biocomputer, right? When he also says that in reality, the human brain is more advanced than any computer still today that we've created. There are so many operations going on at one time, so many associations and neural signals firing at one time. One human brain is more powerful than any computer that we've created yet, you know? And that's why Alan Jurgensen said, the brain is a horrible thing to taste. Oh wait, but the brain is a horrible thing to waste, right? Yeah. So brain is a horrible thing to waste, man. And that's one of the tragedies of the conspiracy of stupidity, is that, you know, we're constantly fucking, humans are, you know, hopefully evolving through the stupidity of learning how not to waste brains, you know, wasting your own fucking brains, and, you know, letting other people's brains just get wasted, you know. And there's a lot of that happening. We have whole economic strategies, whole political strategies, playbooks written about how to take advantage of the wasted brains, you know, which in the grand scheme of things, according to people like Wilson, Leary, Lilly, and all these people, is that every wasted brain is adding to the conspiracy of stupidity, where we need all hands on deck right now. We need everyone activated and fucking tuned in, turned on, and all that motherfucking shit, you know. And that doesn't just happen, right? And it doesn't just happen from watching these fucking videos. Like, you got to read these books, man. You got to fucking get your studies going. But besides all that, speaking about the notion of amnesia and trauma, right? What Freud, Lilly, and the hypnotists saw is that people have this unawareness around some sort of traumatic event that had this impact on their character structure, where they these secondary drives emerge or whatever that are maladaptive, right? That are not helping you in the long run. And that's generally why people might end up in therapy or something, right? Or they feel stuck or whatever. There's these issues, these problems, right? And Freud believed that through free association, you know, the person will be able to themselves go to that area where they're unaware. And what he found was people have an amnesia, these traumatic events, you block them out, right? And then a good guide will help people, you know, just regain these aspects of themselves, right? So that's in the realm of internal landscape psychology. But today I want to just quickly talk about the manifestation of uh, body trauma, right? And the idea of body trauma runs a whole spectrum and a long gamut, right? Specifically, I'm just talking about like injuries, physical injuries, right? Because I've been dealing with physical injuries and like some of the insights of learning, you know, about the human anatomy, form, and function through injuries, which is interesting, right? Um, but it also, my quick little discussion here is like a add-on and breakdown of Lilly's famous saying, you know, in the province of the mind, there are no limits, right? And then he continues, no limits to thinking, no limit to whatever else, right? And that the point being, in the province of the mind, there being no limits, one can constantly transcend your mental limitations, right? And Lilly and Wilson, especially, they spend a lot of time. And Wilson is a great guide. Robert Anton Wilson is a great guide for people who appreciate his style of writing, to help, you know, make implicit what was explicit, right? Those internalized belief systems that you know, guide your life, right? And basically, what they are seeking to promote are that people uh, look at themselves and look at those belief systems, and then it's up to them to choose. Like, well, am I cool with this thing or this belief, or should I let this go, right? And that's in many ways just the role of a philosopher, right? And so again, that's within the realm of uh, you know, human psyche and understanding, and with that focus on there being no limits, right? They're writing this in the 70s, but that whole notion and idea of neuroplasticity, well, I don't think was really, you know, it was only mainstreamed what, like 10 years ago or something. The idea that our our uh, our brains don't just get set a certain way and then it's like that for the rest of our lives. That these things are constantly recreating themselves, and that in this moment, this very moment, right where you are sitting now, you can positively affect the health of these neurons and help uh, um, them function at a higher uh, rate of efficiency, or probably more importantly, um, help heal from injuries, brain injuries, and whatnot. I mean, that's where I think the notion of neuroplasticity came from, right? Um, that scientists have been finding that people are able to heal from things that we thought in the past that could not be healed from, right? And that what allows that to happen is they're discovering basically that our brains are more, you know, plastic and malleable, even physically, than we thought years, you know, decades ago, right? Um, when, you know, people like Lilly and Leary and Wilson and these other people were saying this decades ago, you know. So if you're educated in those three guys, all this talk about these amazing discoveries in neuroplasticity is old news, man. And it's just said in more boring, less funny, less entertaining ways, right? But at least now it's in the textbooks, the idea of a critical period in neuroplasticity. And this is significant in the idea of rehab and healing from physical injuries. And we receive physical injuries in from many different experiences in life, work injuries, for younger people, injuries from organized sports from when you're a kid. I've had both of those injuries. My first pretty major injury, back injury, was from that. From sports injury from high school, and then years later, my next pretty bad back injury was a work related injury, from a working construction, and it being fucking February, and your bosses are yelling at you, and you're on a fucking demo crew. I was swinging a pickaxe in the middle of February in New York City into at the end of the day. These guys didn't have us do this first. This was at the end of the day of doing a lot of construction and moving a lot of shit. And then then we had to swing these pickaxes and rip up the sidewalks. So when you're young, and and this has been my thing that I've had to learn, because my body's telling me, that is learning to listen to your body enough to just chill out and slow down. Like I've had I've generally been more oriented to push through it, push through this, push through that. And that's from, whatever, right? And these are things I'm learning to, like, the hard way through getting injured, to listen to the signal of the first little bit of pain, and then learning to chill out. Well, if there's anyone that's watching this that hasn't gotten these injuries yet, I would recommend to really practice the art of tuning into your body, before, during, and after these crazy physical activities. So lo and behold, say for instance, well, these two injuries that I've gotten, right, they've become lifelong trigger points now that I must be aware of. And these two injuries are very basic, I think, are not common, I should say. These things happen to a lot of people, man. Maybe you already have some back injury, and you're trying to wonder, well, what the fuck? Why does this keep happening? Well, the power that I have found in basically getting very clear on what is the anatomy and physiology of your body, right? In terms of just getting a better understanding of your injuries. Like, this is all very basic stuff, but it's worthwhile to be said over and over again, especially perhaps like if you were on like the path, right? Like the way of you've been inspired by certain writers to go seeking the higher ground and higher altered states of consciousness, and explore those higher realms of consciousness. Well, you got to walk in both worlds. You got to always come back to your body. And like John Lilly said, in the province of the mind there are no limits, but in the province of the mind there are definite limits, right? And those limitations are generally bordered, if you will, or bookmarked by pain, right? Pain is telling you what your fucking limitations are right there. And for those of you out there who also have, call it the Nietzschean Promethean urge, right? Like to want to just push to the next, just get it through. Yo, all of this is in flux. You got to push this to the next level. Well, there is that feedback loop. It doesn't work just like that. You can't just push it through. You know what I mean? You got to pay attention to the signals of your body, right? And also learning the anatomy and physiology, right? So and that's kind of quickly getting, I want to get open on that. So for instance, this I found this thing recently. It's pretty cool, right? Like it's an approach, it's a healing modality, and it's called neurokinetic therapy, right? And I haven't taken it. I've only fucking seen it here and there. I haven't read the book, but the little things that I've seen, I've studied enough of this stuff to see that there's a lot of cool things here, and I'd like to look more into it. But again, I'm not endorsing this thing right now because I haven't even really fully examined it yet. This whole neurokinetic therapy modality, but the things that I have seen, I like, because one insight that that modality has found, right, or yeah, uh, is the neurokinetic connection, right? So the signals that are happening around injury, and then how to go about rehabbing your body from these injuries. So what happens, say for instance, I my L4 L5 got injured. It was I was playing football, and just fucking whatever, it was like football tryouts or some shit, and it's just like you're running through those fucking machines, you're getting tackled like the fuck. Well, I don't understand making fucking children play football, man. I don't know, but I got injured, and that injury fucked with me, and I had to learn and about, and I'm still learning, like uh, still learning about the how my body functions in terms of rehab and recovery from this. So, um, you get an injury in your lower back, right? Say you're moving pallets at work and you're lifting large books and you're twisting from one way to the next, or you get an injury in your lower back. It's a car accident, so many things, right? And your L4, L5 is a common area where that injury would be, right? So, not only your L4, L5, that's your lumbar spine, right? So, your spine, has the different regions and names, the top part, that's your cervical spine, and then your thoracic spine, right? And then it goes to your lumbar spine, which is your trunk, your torso, into your hips. And then you have your lower spinal realms, like your coccyx and your sacrum, right? And so the L4, L5 is actually like a super common area these days where people do have dysfunction because um, we if we're sitting a lot and we're sedentary, even driving in cars, your psoas muscle gets weak, right? Your psoas muscle is weakened, and then you're don't there are not it's not common there are not common exercises, commonly known exercises for strengthening your psoas, but I recommend them, right? Or at least I try to do them to further secure and help, with healing of the lumbar spine, right? Um, but this is the thing that is tricky when you are seeking to do these rehab exercises or even exercises after injury, is that what I have found now that I have these 3 points, lower back and then upper back, right? Um, these things become trigger points that uh, are more easily now to become re-injured again, right? And I see how this could become a vicious cycle, and then this is just how people fucking get old, like in pain, right? Because what's missing in all of this was what I think the neurokinetic therapy brings to the table is the idea and understanding that when the injury happened, right, a disconnect occurs in your brain and signals now uh, from the pain, because like I said in the previous video I just did, how when your skin is ruptured, the scab doesn't heal in the same striation as your skin, like a keloid is formed, right? And same goes with the muscle, right? Keloids get formed, right? But not only that, because the neural connection, something is lost now between that part of your body that you've just injured, signals going from brain to that part of the body, the neural signals, etc. And so what occurs then is an amnesia. Here we go. I finally got to the point. You have a body amnesia, right? Just like you have mental amnesias, right? And so how therapy, the term we use, or healing modalities, right? The therapists try to help people look at and get woke to their mental amnesias, if you will, right? We can approach, our bodies, right, and seeking to understand how we can heal our physical somatic amnesias, right? And when I've been looking at this stuff for many years now, right? And when I first read what neurokinetic therapy claims to be able to do, right, it really it blew my mind a little bit. And I think that's a great insight that that whoever came up with that, that he or she discovered, that we the resultant physical amnesia, body amnesia, somatic amnesia. Your muscle has an amnesia now, and this is part of the rehab process that needs to happen. So if I have this correct, one of the things that occur is, say you have this injury in your lower back, right? And that injury could even affect your what they call it, your sacral iliac joint. So you have your muscles and then your joints and your ligaments, right? And injury and a lot of lower back injuries will affect, say, the L4, L5 region, your lumbar spine. That's your lower back. L4, L5 is basically those muscles are like really close. That part of the spine is very close to your pelvis and your sacrum, right? Other parts can be injured, or your SI joint can get injured, right? And so that being a joint, that's something you got to really look out for. But the fact that that is a joint, so when you go for a chiropractic adjustment and you're laid on your side and the chiropractor cracks your lower back right there, that's your SI joint clicking back, right? Because oftentimes that's a major injury point, right? That people get is an SI joint goes out of whack, and that causes a lot of pain, right? Um, but I bring that up because injuries around there, L4, L5, and your SI joint, um, the surrounding areas, minuscule, tiny little muscle fibers, and even there are ligaments. Your SI joint ligaments, like all of these things, lose signal, right, from your brain, right? Like the signal wears down. And so there's a certain amnesia and then inactivity around all of those points, right? And a weakness then in your muscle around that area emerges, right? And then your body, a muscle will go out and it will receive less signal, right? And therefore be less activated in your movement and your next exercises. So you could be exercising all day, but your muscle now is no longer to receive the goodness of those exercises, and you have now other muscle groups that overcompensate in order to bear the weight, right? And so that's just a quick little take, meditation on all this, things that I found interesting. I'm really excited to you know learn this about this neurokinetic connection in terms of basically DIY rehab, right? Especially these days, I don't know how many of you out there don't have fucking healthcare, right? You can't go see a fucking doctor, and you got to figure out how to stay healthy in these times, right? You got to keep your body in balance as well as your mind, and you may have experienced some injuries, some traumas of just living in this life, you know, work trauma. Hey man, that's all it is. You got to work. You got to get out there. Cause you know what? I fucked up my back that night, you know, and I didn't even know I should have iced it or anything. And I was stupid. Right. And even more stupid, you know, I went back to work the next fucking day doing the same thing, you know, in the middle of fucking February in Howard Beach on the goddamn water, you know, looking out at the fucking cold water splashing into your fucking swinging a pickaxe, taking up concrete, you know, not the best, you know, bad decision, you know, but I had to make that money. And that's in order to for us to this like you live and you learn. I wouldn't put myself in that position, and I didn't, again, because I learned from that injury. But going further, I guess of meditation, then how learning about the limits of our body, right? That injury showed me a limitation, and there's wisdom in that, because I learned then even more about my body, my anatomy and physiology, truly doing knowledge of self. You know, I can know then, okay, so this is the L4, L5 zone. And then figure out too, like, all right, well, maybe this pain I'm experiencing, do I stretch this like yoga, or what do I do? Oh, you have to do micro rehab exercises like building up your psoas muscle, or building up your muscle, your serratus anterior muscle, right? Which your serratus anterior muscle is kind of like your wing, and that's a deeper muscle that you know even connects from your neck underneath your shoulder blade, right? Like your and even goes down to your ninth rib, right? And it's like that sheath sort of muscle, right on top of the ribs, you know. And then we got these other muscles that lay on top of that, like our you know, for our scapulae, which is our shoulder blade. You know, you got your subscapulae muscle, you know, and then you got the other muscles that lay on top of the scapula. The scapula. It's on the scapula. The scapula muscle. Ah, yeah. And so just knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. You know what I mean? About like how your fucking mind and body function. And this is you know, I had this helps. You know, you want to go, you want to fucking blast off into outer space, you want to fucking take 28 fucking hits of acid and fucking, you know, go to Zeta Reticular and who the fuck, you know, have all these crazy visions. Well, you know, you gotta have a good laboratory to do that in. You know, you got to have a good landing space to do that in. You know, set and setting, you know, is also beyond your psychological set. It's also your physical set, you know. But, you know, saying all that, that's just a quick getting open on this. The idea of healing trauma, right? Both psychic trauma and physical trauma. And trauma, like I said, you know, I don't mean the some of the more horrible things that can happen to people, but it is included in that. But trauma that occurs to your you know your body from accidents and injuries, and how it's a bit tricky learning how to DIY rehab, but you can do it. And I say that as well, not to take away. I think that is probably cool. I mean, as soon as I get a little extra money, maybe I'll hit up one of these physical therapists, you know. But I've seen this stuff online though too, and I've integrated some of these exercises, and they are very effective. So that knowledge that these physical therapists have are really you know, beneficial. And wouldn't it be great if we actually had a fucking healthcare system that was able to, you know, have in their plans, affordable plans of all these different types of modalities of healing. And yeah, physical therapy is part of a lot of plans too. But I mean, like specific forms of physical therapy, like neurokinetic therapy, or cryotherapy. You guys know about that? Cryotherapy. That's this extremely cold, fucking dry smoke, you know, that either you get in, like, you stand in a little fucking super futuristic little fucking corridor and all the smoke fucking like like fucking releases, you know, or you get it from someone. There's the night, whatever the fuck it is, it's in a tank, and you know you're getting it fucking just, it's like coming from a vacuum tube, smoke just fucking going on top of your body, and that obviously that the cold of that cryo smoke immediately reduces inflammation, and yeah, inflammation is being this new buzzword and understanding, and it's, I think, a good area for people to look into, is this understanding of inflammation, right? Thinking of the Mark Maron joke about him being asked to eat turmeric, you know, how it's good for, you know, just inflammation, general inflammation, and you know how we're now there's this fascination with the idea of inflammation now, but I think that's good, because now, going off on a tangent here, the idea of inflammation, I mean, inflammation is the cause of the basically wear and tear, and it's the aging of the body in many ways. You know, inflammation causes the breakdown and functioning of many parts of the body, but inflammation is a natural response of the body. It's a positive response when it's fighting off uh you know, viruses, right? um yeah, then that's a whole other video, when inflammation goes out of control, which happens in the cases of black mold, which I've had to fucking endure that crazy shit, you know. But that's a whole other video. Um, but on wrapping up this jib jab hour, um, the bringing it back in to this contemplation of organism as a whole interacting with environment as a whole. This talk right here was looking at the organism, right? And when one or all or parts of our 11 systems of our organism, you know, falls of dysfunction from trauma, right? And then the amnesia that our body then uh, falls into, right? And that amnesia is seen and observed in the disengagement and the lowered connection between your neural signals and that area of injury. And so how careful one must be in moving in the rehabbing that part of your body, the rehabilitating that injured part of your body, and that you just can't go back into the old way of you know, say, exercising or whatever else that you were doing, right? Like one must, you know, gain further knowledge of oneself by now, right? Like seeing, well, what is the L4, L5? What is the psoas muscle? How do I heal this? And learn what muscle group is overcompensating for this amnesiatic muscle that was injured, or ligament or joint. And then how do you slowly re-engage and heal that area? So like another for instance is, I re-injured my neck pretty bad a couple years back, and that was the result of, again, pushing my body too hard, like driving a whole lot for work. I mean, I was driving almost 100 every day that I worked, and that was like 4 days a week, 3 days a week, right? 130 miles highway to crazy. So I was already tense in my upper back, and then I was spending hours working on this book, Chapel Perilous: The Life and Thought Crimes of Robert Anton Wilson, coming out 2023 on Strange Attractive Press. Boy, that's right. Wrote a biography, writing a biography about Robert Anton Wilson. First biography known, right? A worthy biography to write. I'm doing that. But spending hours at the fucking desk plus the driving and not then doing enough neck, shoulder stretches or yoga, um, added with everyday life stress that we all experience, right? Road rage, other fucking driving and horrible traffic road rage. And then on top of that, pushing myself to say, all right, well, I want to work out too. And this injury came about from doing too much, doing incline press. So incline press 2 days in a row, not smart. Popped something in my left neck area, right? And basically something popped out. It was like subluxated, right? So that being said, my shit was subluxated real bad. And I another thing that occurs is muscle spasms, and I believe that this coincides real bad with the injury, like your muscle spasms, right? So dealing with your deep muscles that are spasming, you have to let that like cool out, right? And along with the subluxation, which is a subluxation of your spine. If you guys don't know, you might probably know, is basically when your spinal muscles just go out of whack, and that causes inflammation too, right? So this was a pretty major injury, and long story short, in terms of rehabbing, I could hardly even lift my left arm for a very long time. I could not even do a push-up for months. For months, I had to start again, like very slowly, right? Um, and it's still something I have to be very cognizant of, like, and the tendencies of what now my left arm might do, right? Like in terms of how the dysfunction has kind of solidified a bit, right? So an example of that is, the shoulder will click after that injury for a long time. So basically, I just the best thing for me I've learned is like neck and shoulder yoga to help these areas. But this is now the limits of my body. And those limits have to be respected. You got to look, listen, observe, and also respect, right? But this humans are so good at is constantly transcending limitations. So I'm still gonna push myself. I'm still gonna fucking go hard with stuff, but uh, deepen my understanding and how you know the human body processes. You call micro traumas, but it's still all registered as trauma, right? And then learning how to rehab by uh, re-engaging that neural connection, and waking from the amnesia. The and in doing that for your physical body, I think the waking from the amnesia is you have to build the muscle groups around that injured muscle, right, and support it, and then that muscle will slowly activate again. Don't go right into the exercise that immediately like activates that muscle. That again will cause, at least I found, will cause spasms, right? And it, I'll touch on this real quick. The notion of muscle spasms, right? And this happens. I don't know why exactly, right? But one reason why it does happen is when you stress your body out too much. Like I said, you drive a fucking 130 miles a goddamn day. You spend hours at a desk typing and doing this all day, looking down at a screen, still have it. And then you don't stretch properly and you think you're goddamn fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger at the gym, fucking lifting as heavy as you can. No, man, don't do that, you know? But, like one result though, besides the bones shifting, right, in the injury, is, like I said, the spasms, right, that then occur. And so what I have found there are spasms, like your neck muscles can easily spasm. I think that's your serratus anterior. Your core muscles will spasm from an injury or overwork. So I've messed up my psoas muscle, my iliopsoas, right? So your psoas aligns your with your spine, right? It like runs, it's almost like a hockey stick thing, right? So it kind of, and it's so deep, it runs through your pelvis, like your lower back through your pelvis. So when your psoas is spasming or is constricted, it pulls your lower spine, they call it an anterior tilt, so that pulls it out, causing more stress to your upper hamstrings. And then like your lower back, you got lower back pains all the time and you can't stretch it out, you can't do this. And really, so many people's lower back issues, right, are caused by things like this, like a spasm, a spasming psoas, right? And even deeper below than like a deep, you know, deeper than your glute muscles, right, is your piriformis, right? And your piriformis kind of runs across like that. Your glute area, your motherfucking butt, your ass, motherfucker. You got your piriformis. So your glute muscles are like three layers, right? Your medius, your maximus, your minimus, or whatever the fuck. So you got three layers of glute muscles. But even beneath that, this is how the muscles are layered. Really cool, like, right? Your piriformis muscle, which is really thin, right, and not that big, but it performs a very important function because these deep core, these are your core muscles. Your serratus anterior, your psoas, your iliacus or your iliopsoas, right? So that's your hip. That's the side. It's your side body, your lower side body. You might notice sometimes like the edge of your outer hip is sore, right? And you're like, what the fuck is this sore? I can't stretch it out. I can't do that. Like it could just be your whole iliopsoas is extra tight, So you got to learn how to just relax that and chill that out, and not only stretch the stuff out. It's about activating the inactive muscle groups, like generally psoas muscles are retardedly weak on most people today because we are sitting down all the time, cutting off the activation of this muscle. So there are specific exercises one must do to strengthen one's psoas, right? But I'm speaking about when these things dysfunction in spasm, right? And all of these areas, your piriformis will spasm. It's actually called piriformis spasm syndrome, psoas spasm syndrome. And I think your serratus anterior can most definitely spasm, because I think that's what I had going on, when I injured my neck the last time, on like some major shit. And now all this stuff can just happen, just fucking turn your head one day, you're stressed out, didn't, you know, and is what it is. So this is the thing of you got to stay vigilant on your own self, right? Keeping this in tune with, the observation of your laboratory, which is yourself, and the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding and the functioning of where you're at today, so that's what I try to do. Shit, you don't have to you don't have to listen to what I'm saying. This is just how I'm doing it, and on that note, today I did a little bit of yoga, and yesterday I got a chiropractic adjustment, and those things helped, and on a subtle note, these things may, help your mind function a little smoother, a little better in this associative interaction between your mental states and your physical body. You know what I mean? And so that's what this jib jab was about here today. I hope it might have brought a little bit of insight, inspiration. You know what I mean? In terms of just gaining deeper knowledge and clarity about the anatomy and physiology and function of this bag of meat that we all got. So that's what it is. I hope you guys are doing well, and peace out.